When should we see the Sharks actually start to be competitive, like playoff competitive?
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker of the Reef, also the co-host of Western Conference Tuesdays on the Locked On NHL channel. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen, probably part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day, or at least 3 days a week until September 16th. So if you want to follow along and be an everyday, all you have to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube as well, or do both. Especially as season's almost here, guys. It's almost here. So today we're going to be kind of continuing our timeline discussion that we looked at yesterday. Yesterday we looked at kind of adding free agents or trading pieces and why the Sharks will probably be a little bit more aggressive sooner than you think. Today we're going to look at kind of the different phases of the rebuild. And again, continue to look at those Lightning and those Avalanche teams. And when they started to become competitive, especially with their, kind of pillar players, and look at how that went for them. And then talk about Celebrini and what to expect for him over the next couple of seasons. So just as a reminder, I am on vacation this week. So if anything crazy happened, trade, signing, anything like that, I'll cover it as soon as I get back. But still want to put the content out for you. Before we get into today's episode, do want to let you guys know that it is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So let's first talk about kind of the rebuild phases and kind of the way I describe them. And if you're a longtime listener of Locked On Sharks, you've probably heard me use these terms before, but I think they're just a good time to bring it up. So you have different kind of teams right now, and they're different phases. And we'll start at the bottom where the Sharks currently are, right? They're a rebuilding team right now. This is a team that is in the, you're shedding away pieces, you're trading away stuff, you're trying to you're acquiring high draft picks. That's where the Sharks are at right now. They're a rebuilding team. Okay. And we've known this for this past couple of seasons, right? These are teams that are picking, top 5 to 10-ish usually. And usually what happens, right, when you've hit your peak, like the Sharks did, 2018, 2019, you tend to go into, you start to slide, and then you hit your rebuild phase where you have to kind of start over, acquire new young stars, like all that area. So you know what a rebuild team is, right? The next kind of phase is I've kind of, like the young fun core, the fun frisky team. These are the teams where you start to see these young core players that you've drafted, and you're starting as they develop and they're starting to become that team of you're not a train wreck night in, night out. Look at teams like the Red Wings, teams that are kind of pushing to become that, playoff team. The Sens are kind of in this phase, but they're a weird, the Devils are like a team like that right now. You would think the Ducks should be kind of becoming one of those teams of, we've drafted really high for a while. We kind of have our young guys in place here. We're going to start winning. They've gotten acclimated to the NHL. Your fun, frisky team, your young core team, those types of teams. That's kind of the next step, right? Rebuild at the bottom. Once you've rebuilt and you've started to acquire, starting to see kind of the fruits of your labors, that you turn into one of those fun, frisky teams. From there, you can kind of go into, it kind of splits a little bit. You have your playoff contenders. So these are your teams that are kind of the, if you're a fun, frisky team, right, and you're continuing to build, you become one of those playoff contender teams, where the expectation is, okay, now we're going to start making the playoffs every year. Maybe you win a round, maybe you kind of, but you haven't really kind of, maybe you make the playoffs, maybe you don't, maybe you win a round, maybe you don't. Like those type of teams where you can still see growth and development from that team, but like you're not ready to kind of fully contend yet. And I think for that is a team that is like now, who's that now? That's a good question now. Like the Kings right now, right? Kind of ish. The Kings, Vegas, right? Those teams are kind of expected to make the playoffs. And Vegas is kind of on the back end of this. But those teams are kind of like, okay, like we're going to make the playoffs right now. Like if we win a round or two, like cool. That's kind of where those teams are at. Or you can turn into a creamy middle team. And I've used this term a lot. And this is kind of the worst place to be because the creamy middle teams are the teams that just don't have like a clear cut direction of what they're going to be. And actually the Kings are kind of starting to transition into this type of team where the teams that are like, you're too good to be bad and you're too bad to be good, where you've got some good players, right? But these kind of guys that maybe kind of started to hit their ceilings, and you're we're gonna make the play, like the Minnesota Wild for like 1,000 years in a row, right? They made the playoffs every year, and then they lost in the first round. And their team, they just kind of like were stuck with the team that they had until they basically had to buy like insane buyouts, right? To try to fix their team. That's the worst place to be because you're usually directionless. You're kind of stuck with like we don't know what to do with ourselves, and usually in the long run you have to kind of eject and start over, like because the talent you have isn't good enough to kind of get you to the promised land, but you're just not a team that's going to be you're just kind of you're too competitive night in, night out to be anything else. So that's, you want to stay away from the creamy middle because the creamy middle is the worst. Like, yes, creamy middle in food is delicious, but creamy middle in sports life is the worst. It's the like, it's the like you're just doing the same thing over and over, right? And hoping to get different results, but they're not. You're stuck. You're stuck in a creamy middle, blah. So, and then of course, you have your contenders, like your blue chip, best of the best. These teams can win a Stanley Cup type of teams, or whatever championship. But like, these are like the top tier teams, right? Those are your best of the teams, and those are like the Florida Panthers and the Oilers and, maybe the Canucks. They're kind of in that borderline trying to kind of graduate into the contender type teams. Like, these are your teams that like realistically, like they've drafted, they developed, they've added pieces, like their superstars are entering their primes or are in their primes. Like, these are the teams that you expect to be there at the end. And the Sharks were one of these teams for a very, 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 very long time. Of course, could never get over the hump, but now they're working towards being that right now. So when can we expect the Sharks to kind of go through these phases and be that fun, frisky team and start to be that playoff contender and hopefully eventually be that team that wins it all? So let's start to dig into that and kind of look at some of the other teams who kind of gone through this. Again, really sticking with those, the Colorado Avalanche and the Tampa Bay Lightning and kind of how they have built their teams since they've been very successful, have won cups, 3 cups between both those teams, each have played for multiple cup. Like, those are the like cream of, those are kind of the top teams to kind of, I think, try to model their rebuild. So we'll get to that here in just 1 second. if you want to go grab tickets to maybe either a baseball game or you have the NFL starting this weekend or whatever event you want to go to, you need to check out Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff, so you don't need to look at all the stuff you don't want. You just get incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets, right? If you're not going to pay $20,000 to go sit up front, they're just going to get rid of those tickets. So you don't have to worry about that. They have super deals all the time. You can curate deals to make sure that you find the best price for great seats that kind of fit that Venn diagram of what you're looking for. Of course, you can see what your seats are going to look like before you even buy. You have the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, and job loss protection. So if you lose your job, they'll take care of you with that. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right. So when should we expect the Sharks to start competing? Let's look at the Tampa Bay Lightning, right? 1-2 Stanley Cups, of course. You have the 1920 season with the bubble, et cetera, where they won, and then they came back and did it again in the 2020-21 season, shortened season there, but they came back and they beat the Canadiens there. So they won 2 Stanley Cups back-to-back years, and then lost in 21-22. So they went to the Stanley Cup 3 times in a row. Pretty good. I would love to see the Sharks go to 3 Stanley Cups in a row. That would be great. So let's look back, though. So you have to, I think, for them, right? They drafted Steven Stamkos first overall way back in 2008. And I think the parallels there between, drafting your kind of franchise center first overall sounds like a team you and I love with the Sharks. Of course, he goes and plays 2008, 2009, was his first season. And for the Lightning, right, they kind of a little bit slow out, with him, but you saw the kind of growth. So the first year with Steven Stamkos, 66 points, an improvement, or not really, sorry, not an improvement. So tough season. They went from 71 points to 66 points. They finished 5th in their division, in the Southeast Division. The next season, though, you saw in the 2009, 2010 growth, 80 points, 3rd in the Southeast Division. 2010, 2011, they get to the conference finals. Beat Pittsburgh, 7 games, beat the Caps, lost in game 7 to the Bruins, 2010 to 2011, 103 points, 2nd in the Southeast Division. So boom. Yes, then they had a lull. That's the thing, though. For them is then they kind of bottom out for the next couple seasons. At 84 points, 40 points in the shortened strike 2012-13 season. They had 100. Then you started to see them kind of build up again. Lost in the first round 13-14 to the Canadiens. 14-15 lost in the Stanley Cup Finals to the Blackhawks. 15-16 lost in the Eastern Conference Finals to the Pittsburgh Penguins, and ended up winning the cup that year in game 7. 16-17 missed the playoffs that year, barely missed it, had 94 points. 17-18 conference finals again, and then 18-19, of course, the sweep by the Blue Jackets. We all know the famous tweet, et cetera, et cetera. But then from there, won the Stanley Cup, went to the Stanley Cup. You see the kind of progressive, right? Made the playoffs, they kind of bounced out, but then have been basically playoff contenders for the next couple seasons. And that really starts for Tampa in that like 2013-14. So that was, if Stamkos was drafted in 2008, that's 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 13, 14. So that was 6 seasons before they were like realistically, or I guess 5 seasons since they were like realistically like started to kind of enter their window. And yes, I know they had that jump that 1 year. So that would kind of put the Sharks in like the 2029 season of like entering their competitive window. All right, let's look at the Colorado Avalanche, right? And for them, Nathan MacKinnon, who they drafted in 2013, right? And that 2012-2013 team was bad. They had 39 points that season, 5th in the NHL. Drafted MacKinnon. Next season, and yes, they had drafted some other guys too beforehand, like Gabriel Landeskog. Like they had some other pieces they had drafted. Kind of sounds a little familiar. But next season, 112 points, made the playoffs. Cool. Then things kind of evened out for them. 14-15, they missed the playoffs. They were 7th in the Central, 90 points. 15-16, kind of 6th in the Central, 82 points. New coach comes in, 16-17. Bad season, 48 points. But that's they get Cale Makar out of it. 17-18, make it to the playoffs. Lose in the first round to the Preds. 95 points, 4th in the Central. 18-19. Make it to the second round. They beat the Flames in the first round, make it to the second round, losing game 7 to the Sharks in the 18-19 season. We all remember that series. 90 points, 5th in the Central. 19-20, 92 points, 2nd in the Central. That was, of course, shut down with COVID. Lou beat the Coyotes in the first round. Lose to the Stars in game 7. 2021, same thing. Make the playoffs, lose in the second round. But they continue to believe in what they're building. 21-22, win the Stanley Cup. It's pretty good. First in the Central, 119 points, absolute monster that season. 22-23, of course, they get shocked by the Kraken, and then last year the injuries, and they lose basically everyone because of injuries, but still. So again, 2013, and then you can kind of, when MacKinnon was drafted, and then kind of that start to sustained success, right? And that build for them 2017 to 2018 season. So again, that like 4 years, 3 or 4 years, and with Nathan MacKinnon, right? Great rookie season, kind of, but then really found his game. So I think for the Sharks, like being realistic, like I know we're like, okay, let's start to kind of build things here and start making the playoffs here soon. If Celebrini is the focal point, right? Celebrini is the focal point. He is going to be the Sharks' best player. That is the expectation. He is going to be kind of the guy, and everybody else fits in around him. Will Smith and Macklin and everybody else you draft kind of fits in around Celebrini. Like we expect Celebrini to be like a captain on this team type of player. I think realistically, that 27, 28, 29, like either 27 to 28 or 20 to 29, that is going to be the start of like when the Sharks need to be every year kind of continue. Okay, like that's you're entering your playoff type of team where you're a playoff team. Your expectations, you're a playoff team, and then you start to move into that contending team. And if that contending team is that like 2030 season, right? Or maybe you get 2 years where you maybe you went around and you kind of continue to build, but that 2030, 31, I think is the season where you really start to be like, okay, this is the Sharks should be, everybody should be hitting their primes, for Celebrini, that's his age, 26. So That's his like age 24 season, age 24, 25, like in that range, right? Eklund will be like 28. Will Smith will be like 20. Like that's kind of the age where all those guys are going to be right in their primes. A guy like Askarov who's going to be, kind of the same thing at like 29, age 20, 29. Like all those guys should be perfectly in their primes at that time. So that's when the Sharks are going to win the Stanley Cup. Well, put your bets down now. $5 down on FanDuel. The Sharks win the cup 20-31. There you go. So, but yeah. So I think we talked about yesterday, starting to add the pieces, right? But you have to be realistic and like when everything kind of comes together and as these guys grow and develop. And I think looking at how these other teams went, it's going to take some time for them to kind of really hit their gears and kind of get things going. So we'll talk about Celebrini and kind of what to look for him at his as his growth and development. So we'll get to that here in just 1 second. Thank you guys again for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Again, proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. For your second listen, go check out the Locked On NHL show. Go check out Locked On Fantasy Hockey if you want to start getting ready for your fantasy hockey drafts. Or go check out any of the great shows here at the, especially in the Bay Area, right? You got Locked On Niners. The first game of the season starts this weekend. You got Locked On Raiders if you're a Raiders fan who've following them as they move to Vegas. You got Locked On A's, you got Locked On Giants, Locked On Warriors, plenty of great stuff here at the Locked On NHL Network, where again, we cover your team every day. So, Celebrini, right? The pillar, the dude. And kind of, again, the Nathan MacKinnon thing, who has been kind of compared. I know you've seen the like Nathan MacKinnon mixed with Sidney Crosby. MacKinnon, first season, 82 games, 63 points. And I think that's a very realistic expectation for Celebrini this season, that like 24 goals, 39 assists, kind of playing, good chunk of the games. Then we saw a little bit of a dip out of Nathan MacKinnon. That second season is age 19. Played 64 games, 14 goals, 24 assists, 38 points. So dealing with some injuries there. 15-16, 72 games, 21 goals, 31 assists, 52 points. Then that 2017 season, the same thing, right? 82 games, 16 goals, 37 assists, 53 points. But then it clicked, that age 22 season. 74 games, 39 goals, 58 assists, 97 points. It's pretty good. 18-19. And then like basically since then, the dude has been he's been an absolute monster. 18-19, 99 points in 82 games, including 41 goals. 19-20 with the shortened season, he had 69 games, he had 93 points in that. 20-21 in the bubble season, 65 points in 48 games. And that season, that was a weird season. We all know. 22-23, 71 games, 111 points. And then last year, 140 points in 82 games, won the Hart last year. Like, you saw like it kind of took a couple seasons for him, but then when it clicked, it was like, boom, this is the dude like here, like for him. And there was, some questions with him and going forward and kind of like, what are you kind of getting and stuff. But then all of a sudden, like it just clicked for him. Looking at Steven Stamkos, who a little bit different because he dealt with some injuries throughout the years and stuff, but like kind of the way he progressed, right? Stamkos, 18-year-old season, 2008 to 2009, 79 games, 23 goals, 23 assists, 46 points. Okay. Age 19, 82 games, 51 goals, 44 assists, 95 points. 2010 to 11 is age 20 season, 82 games, 45 goals, 46 assists, 91 points. 11, 12, 82 games, 60 goals, 37 assists, 97 points. Then you had the lockout season, you had 57 points in 48 games. Dealt with some injuries in 13-14. You saw the team kind of tank that year where they had 40 points in 37 games still. Then you had 72 points in 82 games. Then 64 and 77, dealt with some injuries in 16-17, where he had 20 points in 17 games. But then again, 78, the 17-18, 86 points in 78, 98 points in 82, 66 and 57 with the COVID year, 34 and 30. Like you see, like Stamkos has dealt with some injuries, has been kind of a little bit more up and down, but he took off right away. So there's kind of two good examples of different guys where, you have the Sidney Crosby where he's just like 100 points like from day one, which I think is a lot to ask for Macklin Celebrini. But like if Celebrini, comes out and puts out like 50, 60 points this season, which I think is expectations, like there's very much a world where we're talking about 100 points Celebrini in year two. And I don't think he's going to be the goal scorer that Steven Stamkos is. Maybe he just kind of continually builds and then all of a sudden it clicks. And then, maybe that age 22 season where it's like Celebrini's putting up 100 points a season. And that's kind of the expectation for him is when he gets to that point is Celebrini's I think he's going to be a 100-point type of guy for the Sharks every, season, kind of basically from his age 22 season to his age 32 season. Like if he stays healthy, that's kind of the expectation is Celebrini's going to be that type of dude where he's just cranking out 100-point seasons for you. And the Sharks are just really good for the next 10 years during that time. So, but again, like different paths, different ways to get there. Both those guys had great careers, or great players. Both have led their teams to Stanley Cups. And I think biggest thing from here is, right, like it's the, especially from these past two episodes of you want to be aggressive in adding pieces and making sure you have the right guys around Celebrini and giving him an environment to grow and develop and stuff. But also realizing that like you're not, even when you add these pieces, you're not going to see these like massive changes in results and kind of that's again sustained success where you're making the playoffs every year, you're one of these playoff teams and turning into a title contender type of team. So I think for the Sharks, being aggressive, adding pieces, but as fans, keeping it realistic, like our time is coming. It's probably going to be a couple years before we are that one of those playoff teams. But I think for them being if this is like kind of the last year of the like rebuild phase, and then the next kind of season or two, they are that like fun, frisky young core that everyone wants to watch. And then moving into your playoff contenders, et cetera, et cetera. So, but yeah, that's going to be it for me today. We'll be back next week as we'll start getting ready for the rookie tournament, which is right around the corner. I'll start kind of looking at training camp questions, all that fun stuff. So plenty of good stuff here coming along at Locked On Sharks. Make sure you're following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter at MyFryhole. Till Monday. Bye, friends.